narrative.
I adjusted my tie for the fifth time in front of the mirror, trying to calm the anxiety building in my chest. Tonight was important. My wife's annual office party at the prestigious marketing firm where she'd recently been promoted. She kept reminding me how crucial this evening was for her career. "Are you ready yet?" Her voice carried a hint of irritation from the bedroom. "We can't be late. The executive team will be there, including the CEO." "Almost done," I replied, smoothing down my new suit, the one I'd spent too much money on just to make sure I wouldn't embarrass her. The drive to the venue was filled with her last-minute coaching. "Remember to mention your project management experience if anyone asks, and please try to be more assertive than last time." Each suggestion felt like a small paper cut. I nodded, promising to make her proud. The event space was intimidating, all glass and modern art with people who exuded confidence. I recognized a few faces from previous functions, but mostly felt out of place. My wife quickly spotted her colleagues and pulled me along, her hand firmly on my elbow. "There's the group from marketing," she whispered. "Let me do most of the talking." For the first hour, things went relatively well. I smiled at the right moments, laughed at inside jokes I didn't understand, and kept my wife's wine glass filled. Then her supervisor approached with the CEO, and I could feel her tension escalate. "Your quarterly numbers were exceptional," the CEO said to my wife. "We need more of that killer instinct in the company." She beamed. "Thank you, sir. I believe in pushing boundaries." The conversation shifted to a recent rock climbing retreat the company had organized. Several executives had participated, including my wife. "Your wife was fearless on that cliff face," her supervisor remarked to me. "What about you? Do you share her adventurous spirit?" Before I could answer, my wife laughed. That particular laugh she uses when she's trying to impress someone. "Him? Oh, he gets vertigo standing on a stepladder. I'm definitely the risk-taker in our marriage." A few chuckles rippled through the group, but I felt my face burn. The CEO smiled. "Nothing wrong with being cautious. Different strengths and all that." "It's beyond caution," my wife continued, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. "Remember when we had that mouse in the apartment last month? Guess who had to trap it?" She pantomimed, trembling, eliciting more laughter. I took a large sip of my drink, wishing I could disappear. But she wasn't finished. "And when we go camping, won't sleep without an air mattress and insists on staying at sites with full bathroom facilities." Not exactly the rugged outdoorsman. The CEO's expression changed subtly, his eyes shifting to me with what looked like sympathy. My wife's supervisor cleared his throat, clearly sensing the conversation had veered into uncomfortable territory. "Actually," the supervisor intervened, "I was talking with your husband earlier about his woodworking hobby. Those custom bookshelves he built sound impressive." I hadn't mentioned any woodworking hobby. I didn't have one. But I recognized his attempt to redirect the conversation and felt a strange moment of connection with this man I barely knew. My wife looked confused. "Woodworking? He doesn't. Perhaps you could show me some photos sometime." The supervisor continued, smoothly cutting her off. "I've been thinking about commissioning some custom pieces for my office." The conversation mercifully shifted to office renovations, but the damage was done. I excused myself to get some air, walking out to the balcony where the cool night breeze did little to alleviate the humiliation burning inside me. I stood there, staring at the city lights below, wrestling with an uncomfortable realization. The woman I loved had just used me as the punchline to boost her own image at work. And it wasn't the first time. The cool night air filled my lungs as I leaned against the railing, trying to process what had just happened. Years of small comments and subtle put-downs suddenly crystallized into a painful pattern I'd been ignoring. I wasn't just the butt of tonight's jokes. I was a recurring character flaw in the narrative she'd constructed about our relationship. "Mind if I join you?" I turned to see her supervisor standing in the doorway, 2 tumblers of amber liquid in hand. He offered one to me without waiting for an answer. "Thought you might need something stronger than champagne." I accepted the drink with a nod, grateful for both the alcohol and the lack of pity in his expression. "Thank you. And thanks for the imaginary woodworking hobby." I took a sip, feeling the whiskey burn down my throat. He leaned against the railing beside me, looking out at the skyline. "My wife did something similar at a company retreat years ago. Made me feel about 2 inches tall in front of everyone." "What did you do?" I asked. "Nothing, that first time." He swirled his drink thoughtfully. "And the second time?" By the third time, I was divorced. We stood in silence for a moment, the party noise muffled behind us. Listen, he said finally. I don't know you well, but I recognize self-respect when I see it walking out of a room. That takes more courage than jumping off some corporate team-building rock. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded again. For what it's worth, he continued, I've been in this business 20 years. The people who last aren't the ones who build themselves up by tearing others down. That strategy always backfires eventually. The balcony door opened, and my wife appeared, her expression a mixture of irritation and forced cheerfulness. There you are. Everyone's wondering where you went. Her eyes darted between me and her supervisor, clearly trying to assess the situation. Just getting some fresh air and having a fascinating conversation. Her supervisor replied before I could speak. Your husband was telling me about his interest in behavioral economics. Quite insightful. Another fictional interest, but I appreciated the gesture. My wife looked confused again. We should get back inside, she said to me, her smile not reaching her eyes. The CEO's wife was asking about you. Actually, I said, finding my voice at last, I think I'm going to head home. Her smile vanished. What? You can't leave now. We've only been here 2 hours. I'm not feeling well. It wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach had been churning since her performance inside. Don't be ridiculous, she hissed, stepping closer and lowering her voice. This is important for my career. You can manage a few more hours. Her supervisor cleared his throat. Perhaps I should give you two a moment, he said, but made no move to leave. No need, I replied, finishing my drink and setting the glass on a nearby table. I've ordered a ride. It should be here any minute. I hadn't, but I would as soon as I got downstairs. This is so typical, my wife said, her whisper sharp enough to cut glass. The one time I need you to be supportive, you're running away because your feelings got hurt. Her supervisor's eyebrows rose slightly, but he remained silent. Something shifted inside me then, a quiet certainty replacing the confusion and hurt. I straightened my shoulders and looked directly at my wife. I've supported you through 3 promotions, 2 career changes, and countless late nights at the office. I've attended every function, remembered every colleague's name, and never once complained about being left alone at holidays when you had to work. But tonight, you didn't ask for my support. You used me as a prop to make yourself look better. Her face flushed. You're overreacting. It was just harmless joking around. Was it? I asked quietly. Her gaze faltered, dropping to the floor, and in that moment, I saw something I hadn't been looking for. Insecurity disguised as confidence, fear masked as ambition. I'm going home, I repeated, gentler this time. We can talk tomorrow. As I turned to leave, her supervisor extended his hand. Good meeting you properly. Hope you feel better soon. I shook his hand, surprised by the firm grip and the business card he smoothly passed to me. Call me if you'd like to grab coffee sometime, he said. I mean it about those office shelves. I nodded, slipping the card into my pocket as I walked away, feeling my wife's gaze burning into my back and, for the first time in years, not turning around to check if she was okay. The apartment was quiet when I returned, its emptiness a relief rather than a burden. I shed my suit, the expensive costume I'd worn to fit into her world, and stood in the shower until the hot water ran cold, letting it wash away the evening's humiliation. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake replaying years of subtle undermining. The apologetic looks she'd give friends when I spoke about my interests, the helpful interruptions when she thought I was being too quiet or too talkative, the casual dismissal of my opinions on everything from politics to dinner choices. Morning brought clarity instead of reconciliation. She hadn't come home. A text message at 6 a.m. informed me she'd stayed at a colleague's place because she didn't want to continue the argument while emotional. Translation: she was avoiding the consequences of her actions. I called in sick to work, something I rarely did, and spent the day in a strange, liminal space between anger and possibility. By afternoon, I found myself staring at the business card her supervisor had slipped me. After hesitating for an hour, I finally sent a text. This is the woodworking enthusiast from last night. Taking you up on that coffee offer if it still stands. His response came surprisingly quickly. Absolutely. 3 p.m. at Blackwood Cafe downtown. The cafe was upscale but unpretentious, all exposed brick and local art. He was already seated in a corner booth when I arrived, dressed casually in contrast to his formal attire from the party. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sliding into the seat opposite him. Though I should probably confess I've never built a bookshelf in my life. He laughed. And I suspect you have zero interest in behavioral economics. Consider us even. The conversation flowed with unexpected ease. He wasn't just being polite or feeling sorry for me. He was genuinely interesting. He'd built his career from nothing, weathered a difficult divorce, and emerged stronger. As we talked, I found myself sharing things I'd kept buried. My abandoned passion for architectural design, the small business plan I'd shelved when my wife's career took priority, my growing sense of having lost myself in the shadows of her ambition. Why did you really ask me here? I finally questioned after our second coffee. Corporate loyalty would suggest you should be taking her side. He considered this, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the table. Corporate loyalty is overrated. Human decency isn't. What I saw last night wasn't someone building up a team. It was someone stepping on another person to appear taller. He paused. Plus, I recognized something in you that reminded me of myself 15 years ago. Sometimes people need a nudge to remember who they are. Before we parted, he made an unexpected proposition. My team's working on a new downtown development project. Mixed-use building with residential and commercial space. Given your interest in architecture, would you be interested in reviewing some of the preliminary designs? Fresh eyes can spot things we've missed, and it might be therapeutic. I was stunned. I don't have any professional qualifications. My design experience is theoretical at best. Sometimes theoretical is exactly what we need. No pressure. Just take a look and give me your honest thoughts. He slid a thumb drive across the table. Use a new email address to send feedback if you're concerned about confidentiality. That evening, after my wife returned with a carefully rehearsed apology that included phrases like work stress and didn't mean to embarrass you, I sat down at my long-neglected desk and plugged in the drive. The designs were ambitious, a blend of modern and historical elements that would transform a neglected corner of downtown. I lost myself for hours, examining renderings, making notes, sketching alternatives. For the first time in years, I felt my mind fully engaged, neurons firing with creative energy that had too long been dormant. I barely noticed when my wife came in, hovering uncertainly at the threshold of our home office. "What are you working on so intently?" she asked, her voice a careful neutral. I didn't look up. Just a project. Work-related. She moved closer, trying to see the screen. I closed the laptop, feeling a strange new boundary forming between us. No, something personal. Her face registered confusion, then concern, but she didn't press further. As she retreated, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The apartment felt different, not because she had returned, but because I was no longer the same person who had left for the party 2 nights ago. I reopened the laptop and began drafting an email to her supervisor, signing it with my name followed by architectural consultant. The title was aspirational rather than factual, but for the first time in years, the gap between the two didn't seem unbridgeable. 2 weeks passed in a strange new domestic rhythm. My wife walked on eggshells around me, overcompensating with forced cheerfulness and sudden interest in my day. I remained polite but distant, spending evenings working on the development project rather than watching mindless television beside her. The email I'd sent to her supervisor had led to a flurry of exchanges, my suggestions sparking genuine interest from the design team. What began as a courtesy review had evolved into meaningful consultation, with several of my ideas incorporated into the revised plans. "They're implementing your courtyard concept," he texted one morning. "The team wants to meet the mystery consultant. Lunch tomorrow." I stared at the message, equal parts thrilled and terrified. This was no longer just therapeutic distraction, it was becoming real. "I'm not qualified for an actual meeting," I replied. His response came immediately. "Neither were half the successful people I know when they started. 1 p.m. at the office. Business casual. I'll meet you in the lobby." That evening, I mentioned casually to my wife that I had lunch plans downtown. "Oh, with whom?" She tried to sound merely curious, but I caught the sharp edge of suspicion. "A potential client," I answered, not quite lying but not elaborating that her supervisor was my contact. "A client? For what?" I looked up from my laptop. "I'm exploring some consulting opportunities. In architectural design." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Since when are you interested in architecture? And what kind of consulting? You don't have certifications." "I've always been interested in architecture," I said quietly. We talked about it when we first met. I showed you my sketches. That was a hobby, she dismissed. You can't just suddenly decide to call yourself a consultant. Actually, you can, especially when people value your input. I closed my laptop and stood up. I need to prepare for tomorrow. The corporate headquarters was intimidating, 60 floors of gleaming glass and steel. I adjusted my blazer in the lobby, questioning my sanity for agreeing to this meeting. What did I think I was doing? Playing at being a professional in a world I didn't belong in? Right on time. Her supervisor appeared, greeting me with a firm handshake. Ready to impress some people? The meeting room contained 5 people, all dressed in the understated, expensive way that signaled serious success. My hands felt clammy as I was introduced simply as the consultant who solved our courtyard challenge. Walk us through your thinking, a gray-haired woman prompted, gesturing to the renderings projected on the wall. I took a deep breath and began explaining the issues I'd noticed with the original design. The shadowing problems at certain times of day, the wind tunnel effect the building orientation would create, the missed opportunity for green space that would increase property values and tenant satisfaction. As I spoke, my voice grew steadier. I fielded questions, sketched alternatives on the digital whiteboard, and found myself in a spirited debate about the merits of various materials. For 90 minutes, I forgot to be intimidated. I forgot I wasn't formally qualified. I just lost myself in the pure pleasure of creative problem solving. When the meeting concluded, the gray-haired woman, who turned out to be the firm's senior partner, approached me directly. Your perspective is refreshing, she said. Most consultants tell us what we want to hear. You told us what we needed to know. She handed me her card. We have another project breaking ground in 3 months. Would you be interested in a more formal arrangement? I felt dizzy with possibility. I would need to think about it. Of course, but don't think too long. She smiled knowingly. Talent doesn't need credentials to be valuable. As we left the building, her supervisor, now rapidly becoming my mentor, clapped me on the shoulder. That went well. Drinks to celebrate. At the upscale bar around the corner, I couldn't stop grinning. I still can't believe that happened. 3 weeks ago, I was just the embarrassing spouse at a corporate party. And now I feel like I've woken up from a very long sleep. He nodded, understanding evident in his expression. That's what happens when you start living your own story instead of being a character in someone else's. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. Working late. Don't wait up. I put the phone away without responding, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Trouble at home? He asked carefully. Stalemate, I admitted. She's waiting for things to go back to normal. I'm not sure that's possible anymore. Because of the party? I shook my head. The party was just the moment I finally saw clearly. This is about years of slowly forgetting who I am. And who is that, he asked. The person you were before, or the person you're becoming now? The question hung between us as I considered my answer. Before I could respond, the door to the bar opened, and my wife walked in with a colleague. She froze when she saw me sitting with her supervisor, her expression cycling rapidly through shock, confusion, and dawning comprehension. Our eyes locked across the room, and for a moment, everything else faded away. In her face, I saw the same realization that had struck me at the party. Nothing would ever be the same again. The ride home that night was silent, tension filling the car like a physical presence. My wife gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. I gazed out the window, watching the city lights blur past, mentally preparing for the inevitable confrontation. As soon as our apartment door closed behind us, she whirled to face me. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to find out by accident that you've been working with my supervisor behind my back? I was consulting on a project. It's not behind your back. Don't play semantics with me, she snapped. You've been meeting with him, my direct superior, and never thought to mention it? After that disaster at the party? Do you have any idea how this makes me look? There it was again, her immediate concern for appearances rather than substance. How it makes you look? I repeated slowly. Not how it might affect my life or career. Not whether it's been positive for me. Just how it reflects on you. She faltered momentarily before recovering. That's not fair. You know how important my position is at the firm. You deliberately kept this from me. Yes, I admitted. I did. Because for once, I wanted something that was just mine. Something you couldn't dismiss or diminish. What are you talking about? When have I ever dismissed your interests? I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. Every day for years. so consistently that I stopped noticing until recently. My ideas were impractical, my hobbies were childish, my career ambitions were unrealistic. But when your supervisor, a successful professional, saw value in those same ideas, suddenly they had merit. She sank onto the sofa, defensive anger giving way to confusion. Is this all because of what I said at the party? I apologize for that. The party was a symptom, not the cause, I said, remaining standing. It just showed me clearly what I'd been ignoring. We built a relationship where your dreams were the priority and mine were the sacrifice. I accepted that arrangement for so long that I almost forgot I had dreams of my own. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back, needing physical distance to maintain emotional clarity. What exactly are you doing with this project? She asked, her voice smaller now. Consulting on architectural elements of a downtown development, and they've asked me to consider a formal arrangement for future projects. Her eyes widened. You're not qualified. You never finished your degree. Apparently, talent and insight matter more than credentials to some people. The words came out sharper than intended, but I didn't soften them with an apology. And my supervisor arranged all this? Why would he do that? I shrugged. Maybe he recognized something in me. Maybe he just wanted to help. Or maybe he saw how I was treated and decided I deserved better. She flinched as if I'd struck her. So this is about punishing me? Embarrassing me professionally as revenge? Not everything is about you, I said quietly. This is about me rebuilding something I lost. It has nothing to do with revenge. Her anger resurfaced, familiar territory in unfamiliar circumstances. You've been lying to me for weeks while meeting with my boss. How am I supposed to interpret that? I didn't lie. I just didn't volunteer information you never asked for. When did you last ask about my day, my interests, my ambitions? Not what you needed from me or how I could support you. Just who I am and what I want. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, realization dawning in her eyes. I'm going to bed, I said, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. We can talk more tomorrow if you want. As I turned to leave, she called after me, vulnerability replacing anger in her voice. Are we okay? I paused at the threshold of our bedroom, considering the question with the honesty it deserved. I don't know, but I do know I can't go back to who I was before. The next week brought a strange new reality. My wife made obvious, almost desperate attempts to show interest in my work, asking detailed questions about the project and offering enthusiastic support. But beneath her attentiveness, I sensed fear, not of losing me, but of losing control of the narrative we'd lived by for so long. Meanwhile, my involvement with the development project deepened. I began visiting the site, meeting with contractors, and refining elements of the design. One afternoon, as I stood examining foundation work with the project manager, my phone rang with my wife's supervisor's number. We need to talk, he said without preamble. My office, tomorrow morning. His tone set alarm bells ringing. Is there a problem with the project? Not with the project. Just be there at 9. He hung up before I could press for details. That evening, my wife was uncharacteristically quiet during dinner, avoiding eye contact and checking her phone repeatedly. Everything okay at work? I asked. She looked up, startled. Fine. Just busy. She hesitated, then added, You might hear some office politics things. Don't pay attention to them. What kind of office politics? It's nothing important. She forced a smile. How was your day at the site? But her evasiveness lingered in my mind as I lay awake that night, wondering what awaited me the next morning and whether the fragile new identity I'd begun building was about to be dismantled as quickly as it had formed. I arrived at the office 15 minutes early, anxiety churning in my stomach. The receptionist directed me to wait in a small conference room rather than her supervisor's office. Bad sign. Corporate bad news was always delivered in neutral territory. 5 minutes later, the door opened. My wife's supervisor entered, followed by the senior partner I'd met previously and a woman I didn't recognize who carried a leather portfolio and wore an expression of professional neutrality. Thank you for coming in, he began, his tone formal in a way that made my heart sink. This is our legal counsel. I stiffened. Do I need my own lawyer? The senior partner smiled slightly. Not that kind of legal meeting. We have a proposal that requires proper documentation. Relief washed over me, quickly replaced by confusion. What kind of proposal? The lawyer opened her portfolio and slid several documents across the table. We'd like to offer you a formal consulting contract for the current project and 2 additional developments in the planning stage. I stared at the papers, unable to fully process what was happening. I don't understand. I thought yesterday's phone call was necessarily vague, he finished for me. We've had some internal discussions about your involvement with the firm. The senior partner leaned forward. To be blunt, your wife has raised concerns about potential conflicts of interest. She suggested that your consulting arrangement was inappropriate given her position at the company. My stomach dropped. So that's what she meant by office politics. She tried to sabotage this opportunity. I see, I said, keeping my voice carefully steady. And you agree with her assessment? Actually, no, the senior partner replied. We reviewed your contributions to the project independently and found them valuable enough to warrant formalizing our arrangement. Hence these contracts. The lawyer nodded. We've included provisions to address any perceived conflicts. You'll be working directly with the design division, which operates separately from your wife's department. There's something else you should know, my wife's supervisor added, his expression serious. She's requested a transfer to our West Coast office. It was approved this morning. The news hit me like a physical blow. She's leaving? When? 2 weeks. She cited personal reasons. You watch me carefully. She hasn't told you. I shook my head, mind racing. A transfer meant either our relationship was ending, or she expected me to uproot my newly rediscovered life to follow her. Neither option felt right. I need time to think about all this, I said, gesturing to the contracts. Of course, the senior partner responded. We're not asking for an immediate decision. Review the terms, consult your own advisors if needed. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I've been impressed by how you've handled a challenging situation. Not everyone would have found opportunity in adversity. After they left, I remained in the conference room, staring at the contracts, but seeing instead the trajectory of my marriage. How we'd gone from partners to competitors without realizing it until too late. My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. We need to talk. Important news. Dinner tonight. I replied with a simple yes, and spent the rest of the day walking the city, thinking about choices and consequences. That evening, she'd prepared an elaborate meal and opened an expensive bottle of wine, staging for significant news. I have something exciting to share, she announced once we were seated. I've been offered a major promotion to lead the West Coast division. It's a huge opportunity. More money, more responsibility, more visibility. I nodded, waiting for the rest. I know it seems sudden, but this is what I've been working toward for years. She reached across the table for my hand. We could have a fresh start there. Leave all this tension behind. You could find architectural projects in California. They're building everywhere. When were you going to tell me you tried to end my consulting arrangement? I asked quietly. She withdrew her hand, color draining from her face. Who told you that? Does it matter? It's true, isn't it? She sighed, momentarily dropping the enthusiasm. I raised legitimate concerns about boundaries. It's awkward having my husband consulting with my company, especially after everything. Everything meaning the party where you humiliated me? Or everything meaning my finding value and purpose outside your shadow? That's not fair, she protested. I've been supportive of your new interests. Only after you couldn't stop them, I corrected. Your first instinct was to try to shut it down. Your second was to run away and expect me to follow. I'm not running away. This is a career opportunity. One that you accepted without discussing with me first, I pointed out. Just like you tried to cancel my contract without talking to me. She stood abruptly, pacing the kitchen. So what are you saying? You won't come with me? You'll throw away our marriage for a consulting gig? No, I said, remaining seated. I'm saying I won't throw away my rediscovered self-respect for a marriage that only works when I'm diminished. Her expression crumpled as the implications of my words sank in. I never meant to diminish you, she whispered. I just got so focused on climbing that I didn't see that I was becoming a rung on your ladder rather than climbing my own. I finished for her. Tears welled in her eyes. Not manipulative ones, but the genuine grief of seeing clearly, too late, what had been lost through inattention. The company is hosting a reception next week to announce the new development, I said, standing to clear my untouched plate. They've asked me to present some of my design contributions. She looked up, surprise cutting through her tears. You're going to accept their offer? I'm going to build something of my own, I replied. Whether that's with them or somewhere else depends on many things. But it won't be in California. As I turned to leave the kitchen, she called after me, voice breaking. Will you at least think about it? About us. I paused in the doorway, feeling strangely calm amid the emotional storm. I have been thinking about us. That's how we got here. The reception hall buzzed with energy. Investors, executives, and city officials gathered to celebrate the downtown development project. Display boards showcased renderings of the final design, including several elements I contributed. Seeing my work displayed alongside established professionals filled me with a quiet pride I hadn't experienced in years. Nervous. My wife's supervisor, now my mentor, appeared beside me, offering a glass of sparkling water. Terrified, I admitted. Public speaking isn't exactly my strong suit. Just share your passion for the design. That's all they need to hear. He glanced around the room. Is she coming tonight? I shook my head. She's finalizing her transfer. Leaves for California tomorrow. The past week had been a blur of quiet separations, dividing belongings, signing papers, having painful conversations that always ended at the same impasse. She couldn't understand why I wouldn't uproot my newfound path to follow her. I couldn't explain it in terms that didn't sound like blame. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, the senior partner called from the small stage. We're excited to share the finalized plans for the Confluence project, which will transform the Riverside district into a vibrant mixed-use community. She continued with acknowledgments and background before introducing me. One of our most innovative elements came from a fresh perspective. I'd like to introduce our design consultant who reimagined the community spaces within the project. Walking to the podium felt surreal, like watching myself from a distance. I adjusted the microphone, scanning the crowd, and froze. In the back of the room, almost hidden by a column, stood my wife. Our eyes met briefly before I looked down at my notes. Architecture isn't just about buildings. I began, my voice steadier than expected. It's about creating spaces where human stories can unfold. The best designs don't just accommodate life, they enhance it. As I spoke about the interactive courtyard and sustainable features I proposed, I felt something shifting inside me. Confidence replacing uncertainty, purpose replacing drift. The audience responded with genuine interest, especially when I explained how the community spaces would foster connection across different socioeconomic groups. After the formal presentation, I circulated through the crowd, answering questions and accepting congratulations. Several people handed me business cards, mentioning other projects where my perspective might be valuable. The CEO of a nonprofit affordable housing organization cornered me for 20 minutes, insisting I tour their upcoming development. I was deep in conversation with the city's urban planning director when I felt a presence behind me. Turning, I found my wife standing there, looking both out of place and determined. "Excuse me," I said to the director. "I need a moment." We moved to a quieter corner, awkwardness hanging between us. "You were amazing up there," she said finally. "I had no idea you could speak like that." "Neither did I admitted. "Turns out there's a lot I didn't know about myself." She nodded, looking around at the displays. "I saw your courtyard design. It's beautiful, thoughtful in a way that, well, in a way I should have noticed before." "Thank you." I waited, sensing she had more to say. "My flight's tomorrow morning," she continued. "I've been packing all week, but something kept bothering me. I couldn't leave without saying a proper goodbye, without acknowledging what happened. What I did." I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. "I've been thinking about that night at the party, and all the little moments before it." She met my eyes directly. "You were right. I got so focused on climbing that I used you as a wrong. I think I was afraid that if you started climbing your own ladder, you might not need me anymore." "That's not how partnership works," I said quietly. "I know that now." She blinked back tears. "The irony is, by trying to keep you in my shadow, I lost you entirely." A waiter passed with champagne, and I took 2 glasses, handing one to her. "To new beginnings," I said. "For both of us." She accepted the glass, a sad smile crossing her face. "Do you think in another life, we could have climbed side by side?" "Maybe, but we can't live in hypotheticals." We sipped our champagne in companionable silence, watching the crowd celebrate a future we wouldn't share. "I have something for you," she said suddenly, reaching into her purse and pulling out a small wrapped package. "A parting gift." I unwrapped it carefully, A high-quality compass in a polished wooden case, the kind used by architects and engineers in the days before digital design. To help you find your own direction, she explained. That's what you've been doing, isn't it? I ran my fingers over the precisely calibrated instrument. Thank you. It's perfect. I should go. Still have last-minute packing. She hesitated, then leaned forward to kiss my cheek. Be amazing. You already are. As she walked away, my mentor approached from the other side. Everything okay? He asked. I watched her disappear through the exit, feeling a complex mix of sadness and liberation. Yes, it's a proper ending. And what about your beginning? Have you decided about our offer? I turned to face him, no longer uncertain. I'd like to make a counterproposal. I want to lead the community integration aspects of the next project, with a focus on sustainable social spaces. His eyebrows rose. That's ambitious for someone just starting. I know. I smiled. But sometimes the best perspective comes from someone who sees things freshly. He considered this, then nodded slowly. Draft a proposal. I'll make sure the right people see it. He clapped my shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you're just getting started. Later that night, I stood on my apartment balcony, now just my apartment, looking out at the city lights. 6 months ago, I'd been a shadow in my own life, defined by what I wasn't rather than what I could be. Now, possibility stretched before me like the city grid, full of intersections and unexpected turns. I held up the compass, watching its needle find true north despite all the steel and electricity surrounding it. Some directions, once found, cannot be forgotten. Tomorrow, I would begin drafting my proposal. Tomorrow, my wife would board a plane to her new life. Tomorrow, the foundations for the development would be poured. All of us, the city, my marriage, myself, transforming into something different than what came before. Not all endings are failures. Sometimes they're just the necessary cost of finding yourself after being lost for too long. And sometimes, the respect you most needed wasn't from a boss or a spouse, but from the person you face in the mirror each morning.
Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.